Hey, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the Pronunciation Critique series. My name is Joe Previtt, founder, creator of the English Byte community. So what we do here is we critique non-native English speakers to help you and them get better at English, specifically speaking and pronunciation. So today I'm going to be critiquing English Byte community member Pablo Ramos, who's a front-end developer from Argentina and is now working and living in Italy. So he sent me a video, which I'll pull up here. And the way that we do this, in case you're new, is we'll watch a minute of it in silence, and then we'll rewatch it, and I'll pause and point out things that he could have done to improve it. So without further ado, let's dive in. So I'm going to turn on captions. Also a great way to see how Google, which auto-generates these captions, is recognizing your speech. There might be things that you can fix or improve there.
Creating and nesting components. React apps are made up of components. A component is a piece of the UI, user interface, that has its own logic and appearance. A component can be as small as a button or as large as an entire page. React components are JavaScript functions that return markup. Now that you have declared my button, you can nest it into another component. Notice that my button starts with a capital letter. That's how you know it is a React component. React component name must always start with a capital letter, while HTML tags must be lowercase. Have you look at the result? The export default keyword specifies the main component in the file. If you're not familiar with some piece of JavaScript syntax, MDN and JavaScript.info have references. Writing markup with JS.
Cool. Okay. So yeah, you can see he's just reading some of the React docs here. So we'll go back and we'll kind of just work through this.
Creating and nesting components. React apps are made up of components. A component is a piece of the UI, user interface, that has its own logic.
So there, so just making sure to enunciate that the kind of Z-ish sound at the end there. It's
An appearance. A component can be as small as a button or
us. So it's very subtle difference there.
as large as an entire page. React components are JavaScript functions that return markup.
Okay. So I'm trying to, it's hard because I'm trying to point out there's very subtle things in like the vowels.
Now that you have declared my
So it reads now that you've, but he says now that you have. So just a minor nitpick there. Now that you've declared my button, you can nest it into another component.
button, you can nest it into another
You. So the you is kind of like, it's like you versus you, which is what I'm hearing from him.
component. Notice that my button starts with a capital letter.
So there he dropped the S on starts. So starts with a capital letter. And even Google right here, this should have an S.
That's how you know it is a React component.
Again, he did the same thing there, right? So here it's written as it's. So if you're reading this out loud like he is, then you'd want to read it how it's written, right? It's a React component.
React component name must always
Again, same here. He dropped the S on names. So names, React component names, must always start with a capital letter.
start with a capital letter.
And I think the with there sounded a little, there might be some slight changes there.
While HTML tags must be lowercase.
Must be lowercase.
Have you look at the result?
So here he says, have you look at the result, but the text says, have a look at the result.
While HTML tags must be lowercase. Things. Have you look at the result? The export default keyword specifies the main component.
Okay, so same thing here again, the S dropped. So just something to be mindful, because that would be singular versus plural. So you'd want to just make sure that you're enunciating that S there at the end.
In the file. If you're not familiar with this, if you're not familiar with some piece of JavaScript syntax, MDN.
So he does go up in his enunciation there to kind of prep for that first fragment in the sentence, which is good. If you're not familiar with some of the JavaScript syntax,
and JavaScript.info have already
right, and then when he reads that URL, javascript.info, just like a native speaker would. So those are great.
references. Writing markup.
Cool. So yeah, overall, great job. I mean, again, it's really hard. Like once you get to a level like this, you can read out loud. Like obviously he looks very comfortable. He sounds pretty close to a native speaker in terms of the speed and the tense, or speed and intonation. And just for reference, I'll read this last one right here, right? This paragraph. The export default keywords specify the main component in the file. If you're not familiar with some piece of JavaScript syntax, MDN and JavaScript.info have great references. So the speed is pretty similar. I mean, if we were to compare it side by side, I might be slightly faster, but he's got the speed down a lot. And again, it's just some of those minor things that would help his pronunciation. But overall, I think he did a great job. So that is our pronunciation critique for today. Thank you for tuning in. If you want more of these, head over to EnglishByte.com, subscribe to the newsletter. That is what kind of drives this series, why I do this series. And what I want to do eventually is help thousands, hundreds of thousands of people land remote dev jobs by improving their English. So people just like you. So head over there, subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next one.